Today on Shop Nation, we upgrade the miter station by adding a T-track and a stop block system. Welcome back to Shop Nation. The next step for me to get this ultimate shop cabinet build complete is to add a stop block system for my miter saw. A stop block system is great when you want to make a lot of repeated cuts of the same length. However, my intent with building this area wasn't to make a miter station per se, it was to be a multifunctional workspace. Most traditional stop block systems incorporate a back fence with a block that travels along a track on that fence. The problem with that is that it limits the usable space of the work surface, which is why I'm going to elect to go with a fenceless design. Now, a fenceless stop block system is essentially just a T-track embedded in the work surface that you can slide in a stop block whenever you need it. And when you don't need it, the stop block is removed and you have your entire surface to work with. Now, I could have made the groove that the T-track will sit in when I made the tabletops. However, I wasn't sure exactly where my miter saw was going to sit, so I didn't want to predetermine where that track ended up. Now again, because this is a multifunctional space, I chose to bring the miter saw forward with respect to the front edge of the surface. The reason I did that is really for two reasons. The first is for clearance. If I'm cutting a long piece of wood, I want it to clear any tools that I may have on top of the workbench. The second reason is dust collection. I wanted the most amount of space so that when I eventually do improve the dust collection of this system, I can build a box and I have the room to do so. If this saw was pushed back into this little cutout, I may not have the room to build what I need. Now that I have the final resting place of the miter saw, I can lay out exactly where that T-track needs to sit. So with any cut that I make on this miter saw, the piece is always going to be registered against this back fence. So I kind of have to pick the location of the T-track or the center line of the stop block in such a way that if I cut very small pieces, I can still engage the stop block. If the T-track was way out here and I was cutting very thin pieces, it's going to miss the stop block entirely. But I don't want it so far back that it's in line with the fence. So basically it looks like the fence is about 11 inches. I'm thinking I'm going to do the center line of the T-track at 10 inches. That is inside the front edge of the fence and will allow me to catch any small material that I might be cutting. And of course I'm going to be doing the same on both sides of the saw. So to cut the groove for the T-track, I'm going to use my router. Now again, you can do this with a dado blade on a table saw. That would probably be the easiest way to do it, but I'm going to elect to use a straight bit on my router. Now if your router has an edge guide, that's ideal because you can reference right off the front edge of that countertop. Mine unfortunately does not. So I'm going to be using a straight piece of plywood as a reference fence. So the first thing that I'm going to do is lay out where that fence sits so that the center line of my router is at 10 inches. What can I say? The T-roll truly is king. This time I'm using the 12-inch version to lay out that temporary fence location. The T-track I'm using is from Rockford Woodworking. Now this is purely on my own accord, this isn't a sponsored ad. It's an aluminum channel with pre-drilled and countersunk holes for mounting. As an added bonus, you can even buy the track with an assortment of T-bolts and knobs so that you can make your own fixtures, which is what I plan on doing. Before making any cuts, I'm getting that depth dialed in on my router. I made a few passes and some scrap wood just to verify it was right before moving on to the work surface. I can't help but laugh at myself here. A router makes a giant mess, and not 2 feet away, I have a fully functional dust collection system. Now I didn't have the fitting for my router, but I could have MacGyvered something just to help with this dust situation. I don't have a 3/4 inch straight bit, so I needed to make 2 passes to get the correct groove width for the T-track. So here I'm laying out the new indexed fence location for that second pass. The keen observer may notice I'm cutting from the opposite direction. When cutting with a router, you should always try to avoid making a climbing cut, as I did the first pass, where the bit tries to push the router in the direction of the cut. Just a little bit of edge cleanup before sliding in that T-track. The beautiful thing about this aluminum T-track is that it cuts really nicely on woodworking saws. Take it slow and wear safety glasses because those aluminum chips tend to have much more energy than sawdust. With the track fitted, I can secure it down with some small flathead screws. I chose to use every other hole, just because of how close the holes were together. Now that we're done with the T-track, all that's left is to make the stop block itself. Now you could just take a block of wood, poke a hole through it, and say you're done, but I'm gonna take it a step further. I'm gonna 3D print my own custom stop block. Because I'm just using a single track, if I were to just take a single block with a single hole through it, it would actually swivel on that mounting point. By 3D printing the block, I can actually put in rails to keep it square with my miter saw. Now if you don't have a 3D printer, you can do this as well. You can make runners very similar to how you would use on a table saw sled that just travel within the track itself, keeping it lined up. Here's a little bit better view of how those raised surfaces on the bottom of the block allow it to only make contact with the aluminum T-track. Now you may notice I didn't include any direct measurement reference on the top of the work surface. I may add that in the future, but to keep it simple and clean, I elected to leave it out for now. This system works really well for my shop because when I'm not using the miter saw, the whole system comes off and I can just store it elsewhere. Alright, that's gonna wrap this one up. Thank you again for watching as always. I really do appreciate it. It felt good to get back in the shop and actually make some sawdust for a change. Real quick subscriber update. As of shooting this video, we are at 35,925. Boom. As always, keep pursuing shop greatness, and we will see you at the next one.